Hello YouTube, and welcome to this new video about everyone's favorite Akaviri race, the Tsaesci. Now, this video is more or less an introduction to the upcoming remake of the Invasion of Akavir video, as previously in the original one I did a terrible job at explaining what the Tsaesci were. So I decided to do that in a separate video, because it's kind of a separate issue from the original video. So hereby, let's talk about the Tsaesci. So, as I mentioned in the intro, the Tsaesci are one of the races that live in Akavir. To be precise, it's one of the 4 races that we know exist in Akavir. We know that they live in the southwest of Akavir, among other places apparently on the continent, although we do not really have an accurate description of what Akavir looks like, nor an accurate depiction of what a map of Akavir looks like. So the map that I show you on screen is a fan-made map, but it's the one that I will be using for my upcoming remake video. And in that I decided to give the area that I colored dark green to the Tsaesci nation. In their homeland of Akavir we know that they have quite a sophisticated society with towns, cities, farms and the like. We also know that their country is centralized and has some form of central leadership, but to what extent or what the internal relationships are and exactly who has power in their society we don't know. Just like we have no idea what the Tsaesci look like. Many sources in the games, especially sources in the later Elder Scrolls games, more or less point to them being serpentine creatures, like humanoids with serpentine aspects to them. And they also have apparently vampiric properties, so they are all sort of vampires. While some sources also point to them being more human instead of being serpent-like humanoids. Now, in my last lore lecture on the Meretic era, I explained my vision on this. I personally think that the Tsaesci are serpentine people that probably stem from the old Elmophae inhabitants, which are the ancestors of the elves. And that they got isolated with a group of wandering Elmophae, the ancestors of the humans. I then suspect that the old Elmophae inhabitants evolved into the Tsaesci, which would explain their great magical abilities, which is far more likely to have in elvish races. And we'll get later to that, and then it would also explain the fact why they are able to breed with the humans on Tamriel, since they would have the same common ancestors as Elvenkind, who can also breed with the humans. It might even be that this evolution from old Elmophae to serpent-like humanoids was influenced by the outside, which is probably more likely, but we wouldn't know what kind of influence that would be. For example, it could be a Daedric prince, like what happened with the Dunmer and the Chimer. Now, I personally think that there were actually also humans on Akavir, as I stated before. The humans of Akavir would then stem from the wandering Elmophae stranded on Akavir. And if these humans got then incorporated into the Tsaesci nation or their society, either by being enslaved by the Tsaesci or by being equal, we don't know exactly what the relationship would be, that would explain a lot of the confusion surrounding the Tsaesci biology, as maybe their society would exist out of humans and serpentine creatures, but with the serpentine creatures having a dominant position, at least because that's the most sources that we have. The most sources that we have state that they are serpentine creatures. But for the full story on that, I recommend watching my lore lecture, as it is all my personal theory and not canon lore with the whole Elmophae and that they would stem from that. But if you want to discuss that theory, please go to my lore lecture, because it's not the main point of this video and it was the main point of that video. Now, whether you accept my theory or not, we cannot deny that, at least in the later entries of the Elder Scrolls series, the Tsaesci are mostly being depicted as serpentine people. A good example of this is if you look at the Tsaesci burial mask in Elder Scrolls Online, we can see how the face of a Tsaesci would look like. Whatever you may think of it, this does not seem human, and I can therefore kind of buy into the theory of a serpentine humanoid people. As judging by this mask, that seems more likely than them being fully human. Also in the Elder Scrolls Online we can meet some veterans from the Akaviri invasion, and they too point to them being serpentine creatures with their dialogue. Now, another indicator of them being not really human is their lifespan. One of the most well-known Tsaesci, Versedu She, lived for over 300 years at least, indicating that the Tsaesci have a lifespan that is a lot longer than humans, coming closer to that of the elves, which, combined with the fact that they can breed with most races of Tamriel, gives another indication that they might be related through ancestors. which in my opinion is most likely the common ancestor of all Mer, the old Eldenfae inhabitants. But then again, please check the lore lecture for more information on that. Now, regarding their society, we know that it's quite sophisticated. They build cities out of stone and they are quite advanced in stonework, as can be witnessed in places like Skyhaven Temple, where we can see Alduin's Wall, which was constructed by them. We also know that they have a profound warrior culture, and we know that their society produces very disciplined soldiers that are very respected. And during the time that the Tsaesci were prominent on Tamriel, it is said that they were the trainers of the Imperial Army and Royal Guard. Another thing signaling to their battle prowess is the fact that they were the original founders of the Fighters Guild, a job that they did very effectively. We also know from the invasion of Akaviri, which we will come to in time when the remake launches, that they are also very profound mages, and that it's theorized that they can even influence the weather with their magic. The fighting style that their normal troops use is also very unconventional, because their weapons look like samurai weapons and their armor looks like samurai armor, which combined with their architectural style alludes to them being heavily based upon old Japanese culture in their society. Now, their interactions with Tamriel have been limited, but the few that they had were very impactful. For example, they invaded Tamriel during the First Era, leading them to eventually being stopped by Riemann Cyrodiil and joining Riemann Cyrodiil's side, which made it possible for Riemann to expand the empire. Later, Akaviri potentates ruled the empire for little over 400 years, and eventually they also fought Uriel Septim V while he attempted to invade Akaviri itself. Now, this is something you will learn about later in the remake video. Now, I have made videos on all three of those events, and I'm busy remaking the last one, as I have said multiple times this video. So, for more information on their encounters with Tamriel, feel free to check out those videos while you're at it, because I don't think it's very appropriate to do it all again in this video if I've already done it. That said, I do have one last thing to say, which isn't really related but also kind of is related. 2 days ago I received a tip by someone to investigate the Pulk Delve in the Elder Scrolls Online Morrowind on Vvardenfell, because according to him, in that dungeon a skeleton of a Tsaesci could be found there. So I did that, and this is what we found. It's truly a remarkable find and something that's interesting, and it's hidden quite well within the Delve dungeon. Now, first of all, this isn't a Tsaesci, we think at least. I decided to Google it, as this really sparked my interest, and the skeleton is really interesting. And it turned out that someone else already found this skeleton and posted it on the ESO forums. This was a guy by the name of Forvet. He made a case that it could not be an Argonian skeleton, like I originally thought that it was, and it was rather a unique skull, profoundly different from all other Argonian skulls in the game. There's a distinct difference between the skull's shape, jaw, eye sockets and its nose. And another important signal is the fact that this skull, according to him, is nowhere else used in the base Elder Scrolls Online game. Also, this skull features vampiric snake-like teeth, which would also confirm the vampire theory and the serpentile theory. Reading all this really got me hyped, and I had the feeling that we could be onto something here, but other users in the chat pointed out that the skull here is a reuse of the model of the skull of Lamia, which you can buy as a house decoration in ESO. Now, why do I say a reuse of the model instead of saying that this is the skeleton of a Lamia? Because it makes no sense for it to be a Lamia. First of all, Lamias cannot be found in Vvardenfell, although they could have lived there in the past, of course, but in present day ESO they cannot be found in Vvardenfell. Also, Lamia culture reuses buildings made by man and elf, but it does not really bury their own things to our knowledge. They do not bury their dead. But most importantly, it simply does not fit. If you look at the size of a Lamia in the game, and then you look at this small human-sized coffin, it simply does not fit. And it seems like they just pasted a humanoid skeleton under the skull instead of a snake-like skeleton like the Lamias have, even though we cannot clearly see the legs, which we would need for confirmation. But even though a Lamia would not fit inside this coffin, this must have been something humanoid, because of the shape of the coffin. So after consulting with people, a lot of people seem to think that this is probably a lazy ESO developer who just thought that it was an Argonian head or something, which I personally find unlikely due to the simple fact that if they were classified in the same category and this kind of dumb mistake could have gone about, we would have seen more mistakes like this, more Lamia skulls used instead of Argonian skulls. Now, other people, like my fellow YouTuber Kukai, think that this might actually be a hidden Tsaesci, just like an Easter egg. But then they just reuse the model of the skull because, you know, it's also serpentine humanoid. In the same way, they reused the model of an Imperial for the Akaviri ghost in the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. And that some developer was like, hey, this could be a cool Easter egg, let's bury it in Tsaesci here and let's just reuse this skull, because I'm not gonna commission the modeler to make an entirely different model just for my fun Easter egg. But if that was true, it would open up an entirely new rabbit hole if Kukai is right. Like, what would a Tsaesci be doing there on Vvardenfell, and why is it even buried like that, with like an entire coffin and even some treasures among the grave? I mean, many questions and I have no answers, and I wish I had answers, because it's why I waited with it publishing this video, because I was hoping to find answers. But I don't have anything. I would want it to be a Tsaesci, but I don't have any evidence for it. So let me know what you guys think. And with that's all that I had to say. Now, if you like this video, give it a like, subscribe, and if you want to see the follow-up to this video, the remake of the original Akaviri video, then stay subscribed and stay standing by, because it will come later next week. And with that said, I thank you all for watching. If you want to support me in a more personal way, there is of course my Patreon. And if you want to contact me personally, you know, there's my Discord and Instagram in the description. With that said, I'm gonna go. See you all later. Bye.